Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the House Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee to order and ask you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everyone. Today's meeting is a public hearing on House Bill 1687, sponsored by our colleague, Representative Frank Ferry. I'm going to first turn to Representative Ferry and thank him for being here with us and offer him the opportunity for brief comments.
Thank you, Chairman. I realize that the diversity of Pennsylvania in terms of our rural, suburban, urban areas may lead to some folks wondering, why this is necessary. I will tell you this, that as we may remember, the fireworks law was in the tax code. It wasn't a freestanding bill that went through a legislative process. It was just dropped into the tax code, which now some of us are regretting. The number one issue that we face in July in my area in terms of complaints from constituents is about the usage of fireworks. My district is such, there's very few areas where the residents have to shoot fireworks. Under current law, there has to be 150 feet from occupied structures, so really that's a 300-foot area. Our municipalities are overwhelmed with the complaints. Our law enforcement did not have the resources to monitor and oversee the situation, and obviously our fire and EMS providers have to deal with the ramifications of the structure fires and the injuries. The SR6 Commission, which I had the honor of serving on, actually included reforming the fireworks law as one of their 27 recommendations. The preference of that commission was to repeal the fireworks law. I realize that that's not going to be what happens. But I think there's some common sense things we can do to give our local governments a little more control over the situation. Right now, there's no time limit as to when fireworks can be shot. So they could be shot at 2 o'clock in the morning every day by your neighbors, which I'm sure you would find quite aggravating. It's impactful on people that have pets, veterans, seniors. I have a 10-month-old at home, and trust me, when my wife puts him to bed and a neighbor starts shooting fireworks off, my wife's not very happy with that neighbor. At the same time, those people that are legally shooting fireworks should have the opportunity to do that. So I think we can find a balance here. The bill as drafted limits the time in which fireworks can be shot, increases the penalties for subsequent offenses, ensures that when fireworks are purchased, the information relating to how they can legally be shot is prominently displayed at the checkout counter. There needs to be a few other things done with this bill. This was a test balloon that we floated to get feedback, and we're going to get a tremendous amount of feedback today. I've gotten feedback from municipal folks in law enforcement that they would like to see the initial penalty, which is $100, increased. I think that makes sense, and I think the money should go directly to our municipality to help fund police overtime. Additionally, the 12% tax on fireworks, 2% of that goes to our first responder community, 10% of that goes to the general fund. The numbers revenue gave me were $7.7 million last year, went to the general fund, or last budget season. I quite frankly think that money should be repurposed. I think it should be repurposed to go to our EMS providers, our career fire departments, and our rural fire departments. I think we can establish grant programs and take that money to help those folks in the first responder community. I also think we should probably do some sort of public safety awareness program so people understand the dangers of fireworks. We've had some minors injured and some minors killed through the use of fireworks, which obviously they should never have access to. So, Chairman, you're not here to hear from me. You're here to hear from the testifiers. But I appreciate the opportunity and the opportunity for this bill to go through this process, and I look forward to it moving through the legislative process in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Ferry. We're certainly looking forward to the information presented today. We have an impressive list of testifiers, so we'll move forward with the testimony. I also do want to say that there are numerous committee meetings going on in the building, so you'll see members coming and going this morning with all the meetings that are happening. But many have assured me that they'll return after their meeting, so it's great to have everybody here. Our first panel is the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. Mr. Walter Remmert, the Director of the Bureau of Weights and Measures at the department, and Dwight Jared Smith, the Assistant Counsel. Welcome, gentlemen, and you may proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman? Yes, I need reading glasses.
Is the microphone on?
I believe so. Can you hear me better?
You may want to pull it closer.
Better?
Better.
Perfect. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Causer, Chairman Pazinski, and distinguished members of the House Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. Thank you for the invitation to discuss House Bill 1687 today. As the chairman said, I am Walt Remmert. I'm the Bureau Director for the Bureau of Ride and Measurement Standards at the Department of Agriculture. And to my right here with me today is Assistant Counsel Dwight Smith. The Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture is committed to consumer protection and upholding the standards set forth in the fireworks law. The department's regulatory role is solely as a licensing agency for consumer-grade fireworks facilities. Consumer-grade fireworks are typically fireworks that fly in the air, self-propelled, such as bottle rockets and mortars, explode, such as firecrackers, or both. The primary difference between consumer-grade fireworks and other grades of fireworks is the maximum amount of pyrotechnic composition allowed to be contained in each, as defined by the Consumer Product Safety Commission. For reference, there are two other grades of fireworks that are not regulated by PDA. The first is novelty fireworks, which can be found at most retail locations, typically in prepackaged variety packs, and are limited to sparklers, ground fountains, smoke bombs, and similar devices. The second is display-grade fireworks, which are those that contain an amount of pyrotechnic composition above those allowed for consumer fireworks and are primarily intended for commercial displays, such as those observed on the 4th of July. The purchase, handling, and storage of display fireworks are restricted by licensure through the Pennsylvania Office of Attorney General, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. The Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture became responsible for licensing of permanent consumer-grade fireworks facilities as a result of Act 204 in 2004, signed into law on November 30th of 2004. This law amended Pennsylvania's existing fireworks and explosive law, and PDA began licensing permanent consumer fireworks facilities in January of 2005. PDA began licensing with 25 permanent consumer-grade fireworks facilities in 2005. In 2017, the Pennsylvania Tax Code created a new fireworks law which required previous licensed facilities under the old act to reapply and be licensed under the new law, as well as changing certain standards for all facilities. At that time, a total of 82 permanent facilities were affected when the law changed in October of 2017. Today, there are 96 permanent licensed facilities. PDA offers 8 proposed amendments, most of which are technical in nature. These proposed changes would not affect the intent of the law, but would greatly enhance our ability to perform licensing of facilities and remedy several challenges that occurred with the most recent change to the fireworks law in 2017. A very significant change impacting several existing and new businesses is the increase in the allowable distance between existing permanent facilities from 250 feet to 1,500 feet. The distance change does not improve safety. For example, both the current law and House Bill 1687 would allow a licensed facility to be located within 250 feet of a gas station. The 2017 law increased the distance to 1,500 feet, even though there are existing facilities that, for all intent and purposes, have been continually licensed that violate the 1,500-foot requirement. Permanent facilities that were in compliance in 2004 version of the law are no longer in compliance and are unable to make corrective action because of the very nature of permanent facilities. Returning the requirement to 250 feet corrects the issue for facing several Pennsylvania businesses without adversely impacting public safety. My last point is the addition of NFPA 1124 into the current law may have 2 unforeseen consequences. First, it may conflict with the current code enforcement requirements already spelled out in the law, as the 2006 version is not the current version of NFPA 1124. Lastly, adding the additional requirement NFPA 1124 in any version may affect some or all of the existing licensees because NFPA 1124 has building code requirements with respect to which PDA may not be qualified to enforce or provide oversight. The Department of Labor and Industry has this building code compliance and enforcement expertise. Thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Are there any questions from members? Seeing none, then your testimony will certainly be part of the record, and if we do have questions, we'll be in contact. So thank you very much. Our next panel is our local government panel. The members of this panel is Mr. Joseph Gerdes III, Director of Government Relations for the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors, Mr. Edward Troxel, Director of Government Affairs for the Pennsylvania Association of Boroughs, and Amy Sturgis, the Director of Government Affairs for the Pennsylvania Municipal League. Welcome, folks, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chairman Causer, Chairman Pashinsky, and the House Agricultural.
You may want to pull it a little bit closer also.
Is that better?
Yes.
Great. Good morning. My name is Joe Gerdes. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today on behalf of the 1,454 townships in Pennsylvania represented by the association. House Bill 1687, printers number 2287, provides for the regulation of fireworks in Pennsylvania and would codify and revise the most recent changes to fireworks regulations that were adopted in 2017, when the state made it legal for Pennsylvania residents 18 or older to purchase consumer fireworks. Prior to the 2017 change, a Pennsylvania resident could only purchase and use consumer fireworks if they first obtained a permit for their use by their municipality. The reality is that consumer fireworks are now legal, which has brought challenges to our members, in part due to the lack of common sense among some of the users, but also due to the difficulty in enforcing some of the restrictions of the current law. It has brought significant challenges to many townships, both suburban and rural. In some townships, consumer fireworks are used night after night and even day after day, prompting a rash of complaints. On holidays, the night skies light up for hours over suburban neighborhoods as competing displays of consumer fireworks take place in nearly every development. In many cases, these displays of consumer fireworks are taking place from porches or on lots too small to meet the current setback of 150 feet from an occupied structure, or with disregard to the direction which the consumer fireworks are shot. While most would agree that a few nights a year is reasonable, there are those that have taken the use of consumer fireworks to a whole new level and insist on using them daily without regard to their neighbors' requests to stop. While PSAT's members have not set specific policy on this issue, we are strong supporters of local control, and this is an issue where local officials need some discretion to set reasonable local rules for the peace and safety of our communities. These rules may differ based on local conditions and preferences. On consumer fireworks, House Bill 1687 would clarify several current prohibitions on the use of consumer fireworks, including changing the term occupied structure to building. The bill would restrict the hours when fireworks could be used to between 10 p.m. and 10 a.m., except on certain holidays. However, this doesn't restrict an individual from choosing to set off displays every evening or day that could go on for hours, which the neighbors may consider to be a serious nuisance. While we appreciate that Section 906 would enable a municipality to, quote, enact conditions, prohibitions, and limitations, end quote, on the use of consumer fireworks that are not in conflict with this chapter, we do not believe that it is sufficiently clear exactly what a township do to regulate and not be in conflict of that section. We believe preferable language would list all the state minimums and specifically allow a municipality to adopt customized regulations for community safety that exceed those minimums. Townships should have the ability to reasonably regulate the frequency and length of consumer firework displays, including how many times per week they may take place, as well as additional limitations on the hours that they may take place. The bill appears to grant this authority. However, it would be helpful if all the days that the public has the right to use consumer fireworks were listed in one section. While the existing statute currently requires the use of consumer fireworks to be at least 150 feet from an occupied structure, a township should be able to enact additional reasonable regulations, such as prohibiting the use in a certain zoning district or an entire municipality based on lot sizes, which make meeting the 150-foot setback impossible. Township officials should be able to set larger setbacks or restrictions based on safety and local conditions. We appreciate the requirement for written notice of the state rules for consumer fireworks to be provided or posted at sales locations with the addition of local conditions. It would be helpful if this also listed the penalties for violating the state rules, which House Bill 1687 would appropriately increase, as well as best practices for the use and storage of fireworks. On display fireworks, we suggest that some changes be made to the language authorizing municipalities to issue permits for the use of display fireworks. Specifically, the minimum criteria for a permit should include that the operator has all the required federal licenses and is in compliance with federal law, not just that they are 21 years of age and, quote, competent. While the bill designates the chief of the fire department or other appropriate official for site inspection, it may be more appropriate to eliminate the specific reference to the chief and leave this appointment to the discretion of the municipality, which may choose their commercial inspector. The bonding amount of not less than $1,000 seems inadequate considering that the 1939 Act required a minimum bond of $500 for the use of consumer fireworks. While municipalities may exceed this threshold, the floor should be set higher. In closing, PSATS is a strong proponent of local control, and we believe that townships need the ability to adopt safe and reasonable fireworks regulations that exceed state minimums and provide for local conditions. We believe the bill's provisions for local control are a step in the right direction, but that additional clarification is needed as to what areas are preempted and what specific authority the municipalities would have to exceed the provisions in House Bill 1687. Thank you for the opportunity to be before you today, and I can answer any questions as well.
Okay, can you hear me? There we go. Good morning, Chairman Paszynski, Chairman Causer, members of the House Ag Committee. I appreciate this ability to be able to testify before you. I'm Ed Troxel. I am the Director of Government Affairs with the Boroughs Association. Our association represents the 957 boroughs throughout the Commonwealth. It's roughly about the home to about 2.5 million residents, and within our communities, there is a build-out nature, and so when it comes to this issue of fireworks, it's become quite important to us. I'd like to start off by saying thank you, Joe, for presenting from PSAT's perspective. Joe's new to the local government conference with us here, but he brings a valued amount of information, which is so helpful. And we're moving in a general direction, which I think is good when it regarding 1687. Let me say first that regarding 1687 is that the Boroughs Association is more than happy to participate in the crafting of effective language. I understand at this point we're just kind of like in the fundamental position. There's a lot of good ideas coming from many interests, and so we just look forward. We want to be cooperative, and especially I would just remark that Representative Ferry had some very good input regarding some of the revenues that unfortunately, when this bill was put in place, we're going another place. It would be an excellent place to put something for our volunteer fire and emergency services, always something with our membership. We'd like to say that I could read the testimony, but I won't. I'll just slowly go over some of the points maybe that I think are relevant, some things that Joe mentioned which are real helpful that we also focused on. But basically, when it comes to Act 43, as it was passed, we realized the environment it was passed within, and maybe it wasn't the most ideal shape of a piece of legislation we like to see. I like to say we face sometimes what we call this unintended consequences. Many times something gets done here in Harrisburg, finds its way down to the local levels, and my folks just kind of really are poised with a situation that they have to try to figure out, how do I comply with this new law and at the same time do it in a reasonable fashion for my residents and all the burdens that may have to it. So basically, unintended consequences bring us here today. I think we're all on board on moving forward. Some of the areas in technical wise, and I do have to say thank you to Ms. Golden for correcting me in some of my observations, which is always helpful. I mean, because, if you don't listen, you don't learn, and so this is one thing moving forward we look forward to. Under 901, with the definitions, there's some areas in there. We had some just short kind of like subsequent additions of, say, fire codes. What was this? The national additions, the APA 87-1, and all those technical areas like that. That's a real simple add that we could, throw on something like that. The temporary structure aspect, we're going to step back at this point and kind of look at that, because I know our municipalities are able to really govern health, safety, and welfare in an overall umbrella-like fashion. Whether we want to start drilling into that whole industry, because honestly, the 10 issue has been a municipality issue for decades, and so it's not really just relegated to this portion of the law. One of the areas, though, I think that would be helpful to look at and is the actual language under 902 about permit, and the language moved from permit into permission, and it's kind of like, how are you going to manifest an actual permit? It would be better, is it just permission and it's done verbally, or what should be the construct or the format for an actual permit itself? Within that, how do we want to print out, what kind of notices need to be included in that permit or whatnot? So that's something we can work as we go through. Within that permit too, under 902, the bonding issue, and I think Joe mentioned this earlier too. The numbers that are in there now, the existing, what was it, $1,000 bonding, et cetera, that needs to be increased that to really cover anything that may occur or whatnot. So that's something we want to look at. Under 903, when it comes to requests for extensions, I believe the former law before 43 may have given 1 week, a 1 week limit or whatever, but we need a reasonable time limit framework, something that would give us an idea when these are going to go off. I can't, secure a permit, and let's say it rains on July 4th, but since I still got the fireworks sitting in the back shed or something, here I am, maybe the first day of school I set them off, or you know what I mean? So it's just, we need to somehow limit in a fashion how that permit's time limit's going to manifest itself. The use of consumer fireworks, that's going to be the big ticket. That's the one, it's changed the entire, that's what's brought us here today. It's actually changed the entire framework for fireworks. Under the, if you go on to 905 after 904, tie in there the agricultural purposes. For years, ag folks have been using fireworks. And there was language that used to be suitable fireworks. Instead of, I think, the language that was replaced, it had said display fireworks, if I'm not correct. And I think we might want to go back to suitable. I don't know. Well, that's something we can talk about. Moving over to clarity for when it comes to the, let's see, this takes me back into my section of 907. 2 cleanup measures I'm putting in 907 regarding the primary fire department. If there's any way we can designate, maybe the municipality would designate who is actually responsible for those fire drills and pre-planning. When you get, I know we can address it generally, but it may help. And since we're pulling in the observations of fire and emergency service folks, Representative Farry, whatever, maybe there's a good way to designate exactly who will be the provider of that training and those fire services. Lastly, regarding conditions for facilities, we had a technical kind of change which actually works with just the verbiage of when people are going to be staffing that facility for security purposes. So we'll talk about that one later. But not to belabor the point, though, it's moving in a good direction. We look forward to working with the committee, with all of interest involved in crafting language that will enable consumers to use consumer fireworks in a reasonable fashion, and not really, it's all about your neighbor, and not in a way where they're keeping their neighbors up all night, but in a way where, as I've quoted before a senator who said to me, Ed, fireworks are fun, why not? Let's make fireworks fun here, but also let's make them safe. So we appreciate this opportunity, and I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Amy Sturgis. I'm the Director of Governmental Affairs for the Pennsylvania Municipal League, and I appreciate the opportunity to be before you today to discuss the League's stance on consumer fireworks. The League's membership is made up of 107 cities, boroughs, and townships. Our membership is more based on issues that it is concerned with rather than a form of government. Excuse me. Our members believe that consumer fireworks have created a dangerous scenario for life and property. They have also created an unfunded mandate on local government while preempting local regulation. Essentially, local government's hands are tied when it comes to effectively managing and enforcing the proliferation of consumer fireworks across the Commonwealth. Primarily, this mandate is coming from enforcement costs. Public safety personnel are needed more to be patrolling and answering complaints and answering fire and EMS calls related to consumer fireworks. In addition, there's a need to gear up, if you will, around holidays when we know that there's going to be more use of fireworks. And this most certainly will result in holiday pay and overtime pay for the extra personnel that are needed. In addition, the mandate is also causing an expenditure of valuable public safety resources. Our membership would gladly see this law repealed, but we understand why it was put in place in the Commonwealth, so we are not expecting that. We are advocating for changes to be made to Act 43 that will allow for effective local government management, making this mandate less of a burden. In 2018, the League's membership adopted policy supporting several amendments to Act 43, and we developed that policy with input and assistance from the Pennsylvania Chiefs of Police, Pennsylvania Fire Chiefs Association and the PA Fire and Emergency Services Institute. We think that House Bill 1687 is a step in the right direction, but amendments are needed and clarification is needed. And we need to make this law workable at the local level. We believe that the state statute should provide a minimum for regulation and allow municipalities to impose their own stricter local rules, and also have the option to prohibit consumer fireworks altogether by opting out. Why is this local regulation needed? Because local governments are charged with protecting the health, safety, and welfare of their residents, and local officials are best able to assess their municipality's ability to enforce consumer fireworks, as well as the ability to pay for that enforcement. Each local municipality should be able to decide if it wants to expend taxpayer dollars and how much on enforcing consumer fireworks. In terms of the bill itself, we believe that the distance provision in the legislation is better worded at 150 feet from a building or vehicle rather than as it currently is stated in 150 feet from an occupied structure. But still, we believe that local municipalities need to be able to make a decision for themselves if that distance is in fact enough, hence the request for more local control. In terms of hours in use, again, the bill does take a step forward in limiting use to 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. on most days except for the July 4th holiday and December 31st. We do think that 12 hours a day and 3 hours extra on holidays is still too broad. There's a lot, this is really a nuisance for neighbors who don't wish to hear the noise, have the smoke, and the abrupt nature of fireworks any time of the day from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And so again, municipalities need to be able to have, be able to put parameters, stricter parameters on use that best fit their municipality and their residents. In terms of penalties and enforcement, the bill does open up the legislation for an additional more of a penalty. We still think that it should be set at instead of a fine higher than 100, we think $1,000 should be the minimum fine. This will act as a deterrent to violators. We also believe that because local enforcement is so difficult, because one essentially needs to see the person violating the law in order to charge them, that the private property owner should also be ultimately held responsible for action taking place on his or her property and receive the same fines and offenses as a person violating the law. We think that would be a much better deterrent and much more helpful enforcement tool. As PSAT stated earlier, the bill does state an allowance for local conditions, prohibitions, and limitations on the use of fireworks that does not conflict with the law, but honestly, we really don't know what that could possibly be. So if there's a wish to keep that language in the bill, then we need to have some idea of what local governments would be allowed to do. We believe that there needs to be an equal treatment of career fire departments in terms of receiving some of the revenue from the expansion of consumer fireworks in the Commonwealth. They are impacted just as much as volunteer forces and need to be receiving a portion of the revenue. And also, we think that incident reports and medical reports need to be updated so that in terms of reporting, it can be noted that the injury or damage to property was caused by fireworks itself. That's not something that apparently is able to be noted on forms, and that data should be collected by the State Fire Commissioner. So in conclusion, consumer fireworks are posing a dangerous threat to users, innocent bystanders, and first responders. It's an expensive, unfunded mandate on local government. We need to give municipalities flexibility to manage this new activity. And we appreciate the opportunity to testify. We look forward to some additional amendments being made to this legislation and stand ready to assist with that effort. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Now we'll turn to questions from the members and first go to Chairman Paszynski.
Good morning, and thank you very much for your testimony and your time here today. As well noted, the fireworks do play a role in our lives for celebrations and to recognize some of the great things that have happened in our country. Now we've extended the opportunity for this joy and fun to be given to the regular citizen. I live in the city of Wilkes-Barre, and I know that I've noticed a incredible change in the volume and the kind of violence to the actual sounds. Over the last couple of years, there's been a big change in that. The concern, obviously, is because they're more powerful, they're more dangerous. So far, everything I've heard, everybody has great recommendations, and all we need to do is bring everybody into the room and begin taking one of your issues one at a time and digesting them and see whether we can come to an agreement on it. I was wondering whether you had any statistics relative to the number of accidents that may have occurred. Were there any injuries, any deaths? Because that was a concern that many of us have had because of the power involved in some of these fireworks. The traditional use that we've had for years with ladyfingers and sparklers and so on, it became obvious even to children that there was heat, very hot. So you didn't have to figure it out too long. You get burnt with it once, and now you realize. But with some of these fireworks, it's loss of a hand, fingers, life, and whatever. So do you have any statistics relative to what's transpired over the last few years since this law has been put in place? Whoever would like to answer that.
The league specifically has not collected data, but I believe your next panel may have more information about statistics from across the Commonwealth.
Okay.
Yeah, at this point, we at the boroughs, we haven't compiled those statistics at that stage.
Mr. Chairman, PSATS doesn't have statistics as well. We do have numerous members that call specifically around the holiday season when it's more prevalent, and local news reports where you see structure fires and injuries, but nothing of a statistical nature that I've seen just yet.
Okay, I think the next panel then will help us out with that question. Yes. The other thing, when we were talking about some of the things that need to take place, for example, before you buy these kinds of fireworks, that there needs to be a list of consequences. There needs to be some identification regarding the dangers involved with those fireworks. Certain rules, do we have that now, that they're not allowed to shoot them off at a certain time? Do we have the rule when they buy these fireworks that they have to be 150 feet away? Are all of those, that information being placed before the person purchases the fireworks?
I haven't, now this is just empirical, what I've seen, Mr. Chairman, is there hasn't been a lot of like existing conditions when we sell these things. One thing I think that's in the bill, and I might be mistaken, but there's actually a disclaimer aspect that I think bricks and mortar guys have to provide, that there may be other legislation at the local level regulating the use of these fireworks. So I think that's a step in the right direction. Actually, what I really appreciated like that is that they would, whatever disclaimer they do give that's listed in the bill would be attached to the final receipt for the customer, when it's given to them.
But I'm talking about now.
No, right now, not
Okay.
that I'm aware of. Yeah.
Again, that's basically
Yeah.
the point.
Yeah.
So if you're going to buy a stick of dynamite, there should be something there that tells you what danger and the damage that could occur. It's a lot different than a box of sparklers.
You make a good point, Mr. Chairman. One of the things that you could do with this, a disclaimer of some type that you recognize the local the entity where you're going to be deploying this firework or whatever, that you're aware of it, and then that you are liable for anything that is the result of the use of that. Maybe something to strengthen up in a bill.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Representative Hahn?
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, panel. It's a little difficult to hear over here at times. So, Amy, I just have a question in some of your recommendations. I have an incident in the municipality where I live. There's a vacant home and a resident right next to it. The garages are very close. Someone shot off fireworks between those two garages. So one, that was already illegal because they're about 20 feet apart, but whoever was walking past and did that is not a resident of either of those properties. So when you're saying that property owners should be responsible as well, that's a concern to me, because if the police come out, that the remnants are there on the property, they had nothing to do with it. Right. So I think we have to be careful when we're looking at that. Obviously there's reasons when someone is witnessed setting it off.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, if you're having a 4th of July picnic or whatever, or some other time, and you have people coming to your home, you don't always know that their 18-year-old kids or whatever have fireworks with them. So until they shoot them off, you stop them, but it's too late. So I'm just a little cautious when we're saying the property owner is responsible as well, because sometimes we're not always aware of what's going on or it's happening without the knowledge of the property owner. So have you given any thought to that, or how that would, are there exemptions, I guess? I mean, the property owner is always going to say, I had nothing to do with it. So how do we deal with that?
Well, it's certainly open for more discussion, but I think ultimately we need to look for ways that we're assisting municipalities with enforcement. And if that is allowing more local control, maybe that will be enough. But the bottom line is that enforcement is very difficult at this point, and we need to make changes to the legislation. So we're open to other suggestions. I appreciate your comment.
Thank you. It's always no good deed goes unpunished. So I just don't want property owners to be, getting a $1,000 fine when they had no knowledge that it was even happening. So when somebody sets that off at 2 o'clock in the morning and the residents are in bed, they had nothing to do with it.
That's a very legitimate concern, Representative. Actually, in discussions yesterday we had with Representative Ferry, one of the things that he was pointing out is that what happens if somebody purchases it in one municipality, okay, that has certain rules, et cetera, then comes and uses them in another municipality. It's the same type of thing. You know what I mean? There's some nexus there, is that it's not so much property owner, okay? It's like the property owner, that's a static thing. The consumer or the purchaser is not always static in one place, and the responsibility can go from place to place. So it more or less the responsibility for these have to go to the individual purchaser. They have to maintain that liability, but that's something to look at. It's a good dynamic to realize. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Zimmerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and thanks for your testimony. So from a municipality's point of view, for example, in my district, we have several municipalities that actually put on some really nice firework displays and have done that for years, and I don't think they've changed a lot. Maybe a few more high-powered ones than they used to, but nice displays and very controlled. So having said that, do you see it as more of the bigger problem is with individuals putting off fireworks kind of anywhere and everywhere, or some of these organized displays, are they under control or not? And from your municipalities?
Representative, when it comes to the display fireworks, that industry is highly regulated. We actually, and that's a good thing. When it comes to, I think for this, what would be most helpful is that this is a consumer bill. I mean, this is about consumer fireworks. This is about those items that get into the hands of the individuals that we can't track. We don't know where they're at. They could be building whole displays on their own with the ability to access the consumer fireworks. But the display folks, and even our association, we've used display people at conferences, et cetera, and it's amazing the things that they have to go through in order to deploy these. And so that's the display end. And it's really a consumer-focused type thing.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that, because I just want to clarify that we're talking about the consumers out there kind of use them everywhere. My family has horses, as I know Destiny's does too, and that was actually a problem this past year. But thanks. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Zimmerman. The one thing that struck me, and I think that crosses all three of your testimony, is the references to local control. And my reading of the bill is that it would give municipalities the authority to enact regulations to locally regulate fireworks. Your testimony indicates that you don't think that that's clear enough. So I guess my request to you is that if you feel that way, would you be willing to provide additional language that this committee could consider that would tighten that up as you referenced? Okay.
More than happy to participate.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your testimony today, and the information will be very helpful for us going forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Our next panel is our emergency responder panel. Mr. Jay Delaney, the Fire Chief of the City of Wilkes-Barre and President of the Pennsylvania Career Fire Chiefs Association, and Mr. Jerry Ozog, the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Fire and Emergency Services Institute. Welcome, gentlemen. Jerry and I actually go back a few years. I first met him in 1990 when he was paramedic coordinator at Bradford Hospital in McKean County. So just a few years ago. But
Absolutely.
we welcome both of you, and you may proceed.
Okay. Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Causer and Chairman Pasinski. We're happy to be here to talk about this important issue. The Pennsylvania Fire and Emergency Services Institute is an advocacy and educational organization that represents volunteer and career fire and emergency services and emergency medical services across the Commonwealth. Our mission is to sustain and improve those services that are critical to the public safety of Pennsylvania. We advocate for those who provide critical public safety services. Every day, dedicated volunteer and career personnel respond to transportation crashes on our interstate highways and turnpike, chemical spills in our suburban manufacturing facilities, to fires in large inner-city target hazards. These incidents occur every day and require a variety of services to fires, technical rescues, and medical emergencies. Today's fire department is called an all-hazard organization. We respond to anything from flooded basements to broken fingers to active shooter incidents to smoke detector batteries that are faulty. The National Fire Academy and the National Fire Protection Association promotes the concept of community risk reduction, or CRR. Community risk reduction is defined as programs, actions, and services used by a community which prevents or mitigates the loss of life, property, and resources associated with life safety, fire, or other disasters in a community. The greatest concern that we have in regards to the increased use of commercial fireworks is the impact of increased utilization directly contradicts the concepts of community risk reduction. Our mission is to reduce these type of incidents to save and make sure something doesn't happen. We prevent it from happening. Additionally, as you know, SR 6 Commission extensively studied and reported on what's happening across the Commonwealth to our fire and EMS organizations. Our organizations are struggling both financially and operationally due to decreased firefighting members available to respond to calls. The increased use of fireworks causes an increased demand for an already stressed system. We're certainly concerned by this, and we do appreciate Representative Ferry's bill and support that. And additionally, the concept of using the funds for this for additional grant programs for rural emergency services, career fire departments, and emergency medical services would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Chairman Causer, Democratic Chair Eddie Day Pashinsky, and members of the House Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. Thank you very much for inviting me here today to discuss Representative Frank Ferry's House Bill 1687. I'm the fire chief of the city of Wilkes-Barre. I've been honored to serve the city in this role for over 14 years and a total of 39 years in emergency services. I'm also the emergency management coordinator for the city of Wilkes-Barre and a certified paramedic. In addition, I'm the president of the Pennsylvania Career Fire Chiefs Association, representing career and combination fire chiefs from across the Commonwealth. The Pennsylvania Career Fire Chiefs Association has steadfastly opposed the expansion of consumer-grade fireworks back to Senate Bill 1055 of 2016. When Act 43 of 2017 was passed as part of the tax code, the emergency response community had no way to voice any opposition through a public hearing. This new law poses a significant public safety and first responder safety risk. Immediately after the expansion of consumer-grade fireworks became legal, several groups came together to map a plan to repeal or amend Act 43 of 2017. The Pennsylvania Career Fire Chiefs Association and the Pennsylvania Fire and Emergency Services Institute began discussions with the Pennsylvania Municipal League to address statewide municipal concerns with a new and legal use of aerial and other consumer fireworks. The feedback we received from fire chiefs and municipal leaders from across the state was completely aligned for the new law to be repealed or amended. Over the past 2 years, the support to repeal or amend Act 43 of 2017 has had strong support. In fact, the 39 members of the Senate Resolution 6 Committee, comprised of the major fire and emergency medical service organizations and leaders throughout the Commonwealth, voted unanimously for Recommendation 24, and that's reassess fireworks law adopted in 2017. This was the emergency response community speaking as one voice. In the city of Reading, this past 4th of July, there were 92 calls to police and 8 fires directly related to fireworks. In Wilkes-Barre, like many cities and towns across the Commonwealth, our police departments could not keep up with the demand for calls regarding fireworks. The Pennsylvania Career Fire Chiefs Association membership reported their communities were like war zones on the 4th of July. Keep in mind, the present law allows a person to ignite an aerial firework 150 feet from an occupied dwelling. Does anyone have any idea where the aerial firework will go once it's ignited? Put simply, fireworks are dangerous and their expansion should not have been expanded. There are no safe fireworks. There's something wrong when an industry sells amateur pyrotechnic products that emit chemical-grade materials that, when ignited, create enough heat to melt glass or maim a person for life. If there's not support to repeal Act 43 of 2017, we respectfully ask for the following considerations to be amended into Representative Ferry's House Bill 1687. The first thing is local option to set local regulations. And when I testified in front of Wilkes-Barre City Council, they have a resolution, and that is the main thing that they have asked us to do, is to get some local autonomy for this new law. The second thing is increase the distance from an occupied structure for using consumer fireworks to a minimum of 500 feet from an occupied structure. Next, to increase the violation from $100 to $1,000 and increase the offense to a misdemeanor. The fourth thing, recommendation is the reallocation of the tax revenue set aside for volunteer fire EMS services to include municipal police and fire departments to receive a portion of the revenue as well. And the last thing is mandated reporting of fireworks incidents to the State Fire Commissioner for collection in a database that can be referenced and utilized by all first responder disciplines. I would like to thank Representative Ferry for his concern with this issue and its impact on the fire, EMS, and police community, as well as my own step representative, Eddie Day Pashinsky. I'm grateful to the House Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee for the opportunity to add my voice and that of the Pennsylvania Career Fire Chiefs Association membership. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now we'll turn to questions from the members and start with Chairman Pashinsky.
Thank you, Chairman Cosner, and thank you, gentlemen, for the good work that you do. Chief, you and I go way back, and I recognize the importance of your work. I've met with you and your men. You guys put your life on the line every day, and we all appreciate that in all our communities. You brought up several very important concerns, and you heard my question to the last panel. You did indicate that you want to have a reporting of all these incidents throughout the state. To what degree can you at this point demonstrate the increase of incidences compared to the way it used to be before the act in 2017 and 16?
Well, I can tell you, our organization, the Career Fire Chiefs, went to our membership, the chiefs from across the state, and in our research, we found there's nothing on the emergency reporting that's done by fire departments or the patient care reports used by EMS to transport someone to the hospital. If there's a fireworks incident, there's no way on the reporting, either on the EMS side or the fire side, so we had to extract raw data. And the only place we got it from was consulting our membership to say, send us the data of what's happening. And I can tell you, that is why we wrote in here, and you as a former school teacher understand, you have to have a way to measure the results of what you're trying to accomplish. Right now, the only thing we have is raw data from our membership. So we would like to see some changes to our reporting so we can track this. But our raw data from across the state suggests a dramatic increase in medical emergency response and fires. Again, now we say it's legal to shoot something up in the air, that's fire, and have no idea where it's going to land. In our urbanized areas, this is of a great concern to us.
Well, as I pointed out, and thank you for that comment, I've noted a tremendous difference in the volume and also the intensity of the sound. Now, we've all done things as kids with fireworks for many years, and we know that if you're going to light anything off that's an aerial thing, it depends on the base by which you're lighting it. Because if the angle isn't right, or the apparatus fails, or if it falls slightly one way or to the other, it's not going up. It's going across or into something that definitely would ignite the material. It's alarming, I didn't realize this, that the intensity of the heat actually could melt glass. So that tells you, how hot it is. And we also have a business, that provides stuff that's, once again, recognizes some wonderful things in our nation's history. So we're looking for that balance. And the information that we're receiving today and the information we're going to hear from the industry is going to help us as we work with Representative Ferry to try to make this a workable operation. So I want to thank you very much for your testimony, and I certainly appreciate all the good work that you guys do. Thank you.
Representative Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, on your testimony, you make a statement in here that police departments could not keep up with demand for calls regarding fireworks. Were those calls in relationship to fires or things that happened to people, that emergency calls needed, that somebody was injured, or was it just that individuals were making calls because they didn't like somebody setting off fireworks?
Thank you for the question. All of the information and testimony I presented, again, came from feedback from municipal fire chiefs after consultation with their police chiefs. I spoke directly to my police chief, Joseph Coffey, the police chief in Wilkes-Barre, and he simply just said, we're just so overwhelmed with fireworks calls, we haven't gotten to most of them because there's so many. So I can't accurately say it's because of the illegal use of fireworks or the use of fireworks in general.
So your statement in your testimony really is a little bit disingenuous in the fact that, that came from illegal use, or, it could have been an individual who had a neighbor that was setting off fireworks that were causing no issues other than sound. I'll say, the bangs or whatever takes place, and some individual called in and said, hey, my neighbor's setting off fireworks.
Well, I could tell you there's been a substantial increase since we made these legal, a substantial increase to the amount of police calls based on the testimony we received. The Reading fire chief is who told me there were 92 calls for fireworks in Reading. He was able to tell me that 8 fires were directly correlated to the use of fireworks. I can't sit here and testify whether they were illegal or legal. My testimony I support from my membership all across the Commonwealth.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Keller. An observation, we're talking about setbacks and things of that nature. And my concern is with enforcement. The current law says that you can't shoot off these fireworks within 150 feet of an occupied structure, I guess is the language that's in the current law. But I'm hearing from members that say even under that current requirement that it's still an issue in that it's not, even that requirement's not being enforced in many areas because there are places in the state where you can't get 150 feet from an occupied structure, and yet that provision is still not being enforced. So the concern is putting another layer onto that. Is that still not going to be enforced? Is a concern for me, and I guess that's something we're gonna have to evaluate. In the bigger picture, looking at fireworks in general, I think many people feel that our fireworks law for many years seemed outdated, needed to be modernized. I will concede that the language that was put into the tax code, that was not the place for it. The way that it was put in there, that was not the way to do it. There needed to be more thought into that. But I will also concede that it needed to be modernized. In an area that I'm from, people were coming across the border from New York and buying it at facilities in Pennsylvania because they could buy it and our own residents couldn't. So people were coming to my office saying, this is screwed up when out-of-state residents can come here and buy it, but we can't, and so that was a problem. And the other fact that people were going to get it wherever they could find it. They'll drive to another state and buy it and bring it back into Pennsylvania so that they could shoot it off. So I guess my point is the law needed to be modernized, but I think more thought needs to go into it. There's no question. And the information that you've provided today is helpful to the committee. So thank you so much for being here with us and for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next panel is novelty fireworks sales. Mr. Jack May, the Managing Director of Keystone Novelties Distributors, and Eric Turner, Government Affairs Director at TNT Fireworks. I guess Mr. Turner is not here with us yet, so
I'm all alone.
You're solo. Welcome, sir. And
Yeah,
I guess he's still traveling here to get with us.
I
get here with
understand
us,
that
so.
Eric had to provide similar testimony in another state yesterday, and he was to come in this morning and got waylaid a bit. So
we'll welcome his
Okay.
testimony, and you may proceed with yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Causer, Chairman Ptaszinski, and members of the committee. Thank you for providing Keystone Novelties Distributors with the opportunity to provide testimony on Representative Farry's HB 1687. Again, my name is Jack May. I'm Managing Director of Keystone Novelties. Keystone supports statewide regulations limiting the dates and hours that fireworks can be used and supports tougher enforcement and penalties for bad actors who violate the sales and use provisions of consumer fireworks. However, we do not support the provision in HB 1687 that limits the sale of consumer fireworks to only fixed retail locations. By way of background, Keystone is headquartered in Lancaster County. We operate out of two 30,000 square foot facilities in the county. We employ or contract with nearly 250 full-time, part-time, and seasonal workers at the warehouses and 150 temporary retail tent locations spread across 59 counties in Pennsylvania. We have no fixed store operations in Pennsylvania. All of our revenue is generated through temporary retail locations. This model has been proven to be efficient for the customer given the hyper-seasonal nature of the fireworks business. We've been operating in Pennsylvania for nearly 20 years and believe we're the largest retailer of fireworks that's headquartered in the state. Over the 2 decades of operating in Pennsylvania, we've built positive relationships with 250 local municipalities who are generally responsible for issuing the permits and licenses required for seasonal retailers. Act 43 of 2017 finally gave Pennsylvania residents the same right to buy and use consumer fireworks that non-Pennsylvania residents within the Commonwealth's borders enjoyed for years. I think I now have company. Eric? Keystone supported this legislation of Act 43 in 2017 wholeheartedly. In fact, retail locations could sell the full line of consumer fireworks 365 days a year, while temporary retail locations or tents could sell a limited line of these products for no more than 20 days of the year around 4th of July. So tents had the right to sell or the authorization to sell consumer fireworks, but we could only sell a small subset of the consumer fireworks in Act 43 of 2017. The system was in place for only 1 year before a ruling from the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania struck down sections of the new law concerning sales at temporary locations. In the court's view, the legislature unconstitutionally delegated its responsibility for ensuring consumer fireworks are sold safely by relying solely on National Fireworks Protection Association safety standards. This ruling has placed my business and other sellers through temporary structures in an untenable position by mandating that we can only sell novelty fireworks like sparklers, fountains, and handheld devices. This subset of product represents only 40 to 45% of the market when consumer fireworks can be sold. If forcing temporary structures to compete on this uneven playing field continues, it could very well lead to most temporary structures going out of business in the state. We're currently working on legislation in the Senate to prevent this from happening. This legislation would address the court's concerns and give temporary structures the ability to sell consumer fireworks again. For reference, over the past 2 years, Act 43 legislation it has created resulted in our company eliminating 120 of the 270 Pennsylvania retail locations. That reduction in the number of locations cost PA landowners about $500,000 in lease income in 2018 and 2019. The legislative and court actions also resulted in our elimination of 150 seasonal hiring opportunities in Pennsylvania, which are typically filled by teachers, college students, and school bus drivers. This represents another $500,000 in lost income over the 2-year period to these groups relying on the seasonal income. Excluding temporary retail locations from HB 1687 will have several important ramifications that must be considered. It threatens unemployment for thousands of summer seasonal workers, the groups that I just mentioned. The limitation of sales to fixed stores restricts potential increased license and sales tax revenue to the state. In the 1 year that we operated, for reference, we provided to the state $525,000 in lease revenue as a result of the locations we operated. That represented about 80% of our increase in sales as a result of the legislation. So pretty much the increase, the business opportunity that was created by our ability in temporary structures to sell consumer fireworks was given over to the state. Despite these concerns, we support the spirit of the legislation to restrict use of consumer fireworks to ensure the safety and quality of life for residents of the Commonwealth. However, we believe the legislation should go further in this regard by mandating at the state level a period of use that would just be limited to the dates and time of day during July 4th holiday period as described in the draft, along with New Year's Eve, also as described in the current draft. So consumer fireworks would be limited to those two periods at the state level. We believe that this approach, limiting the use at the state level rather than relying on inconsistent local legislative activity, improves on the current draft by pleasing the most discriminating local officials seeking to implement limits on use. Again, limiting the use to just the period around July 4th and New Year's. It would also eliminate the hodgepodge of local laws resulting from the current approach. It would eliminate conflict along local borders that would surely result from the current approach, and the consumer confusion and compliance and enforcement that goes along with that. Prior to Act 43, fixed store operators in Pennsylvania resided primarily on the Commonwealth's borders, selling consumer fireworks to residents outside the state. Our tents and those who operated other tents around the state sold only novelty fireworks and did everything possible to serve the residents of Pennsylvania while maintaining the highest standards of safety and convenience for our citizens. To again ban the sale of consumer fireworks from temporary structures makes no sense and was clearly not the will of the legislature when members voted on the legislation that became Act 43. We want to continue this service and convenience to Pennsylvania residents, allowing fireworks to be sold through temporary structures. Act 43's underlying legislation, as Act 43's underlying legislation was being debated, Keystone strongly advocated for stringent restrictions, permitting and license fees, and operating requirements for temporary structures. Essentially, all of the restrictions placed on fixed doors should be placed on temporary structures. We do not want special consideration because of the limited days we're in operation or the limited line of consumer fireworks we were allowed to sell. We wanted an even playing field, allowing the consumer to determine where they would like to purchase. It should also be mentioned that those who oppose consumer fireworks sales at temporary locations have also tried to perpetuate several myths about temporary retail sales. These include the myth that selling consumer fireworks from temporary locations is not safe or that operators of temporary locations are not professional. This is simply untrue. Keystone requires our operators to provide 24-hour security at all retail locations and has operated over 2,500 temporary sales in Pennsylvania over the past 20 years with 0 safety incidents related to the method of sale through tents. Further, 20 states, or an overwhelming majority of states that permit the sale of consumer fireworks to their residents, include temporary structures as authorized retailers. In these 20 states, we're not aware of any safety incidents that occurred due to the method of sale through temporary structures. A second myth is the transient nature of tents and operators running them presents risk for accountability and control. Again, Keystone believes these claims are baseless. We proposed and advocated for the language in Act 43 to require all operators of temporary structures who want to sell consumer fireworks to complete the above-mentioned requirements. For reference, when most jurisdictions in Pennsylvania already require operating permits and in most cases inspections to ensure the temporary structures meet all local building and zoning code requirements. This local oversight will continue. Local jurisdictions are logistically aware of and vigilant in shutting down rogue operators. Townships will continue to have the authority to approve or disapprove of transient retailers and temporary structures in their jurisdictions. Most temporary structure operators, in fact, are well-trained and experienced. For example, all of our operators must pass a 1.5-hour online training course, including the need to score 80% or better in the course exam. And we're prepared to share that with regulating authorities. Approximately 60% of our operators return each year, including teachers, students, school bus drivers, and other responsible individuals seeking to supplement their primary means of income. In many cases, in Pennsylvania, operators of temporary structures are nonprofit organizations seeking to raise funds for churches, schools, and youth activities. And our colleagues here at TNT do a very good job of that. Again, Keystone Novelties Distributors supports the underlying goal of HB 1687, which is to provide stronger enforcement of Pennsylvania's fireworks laws for both the sales and use of fireworks. We do not, however, agree that this goal can be achieved by requiring consumer fireworks to be sold only at permanent retail structures. The current language restrains trade with no evidence supporting the claim that temporary structures are inherently dangerous for these types of sales. This is supported by the fact that most other states which permit the sale of consumer fireworks also permit those sales of temporary structures. Keystone and other temporary structure retailers have a proven record of safely and responsibly providing fireworks to residents across Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania legislature voted in 2017 to allow temporary structures to sell a limited line of consumer fireworks to Pennsylvania residents, and we believe temporary structures should again have this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We've also been joined by Mr. Eric Turner, the Government Affairs Director at TNT Fireworks. Welcome, sir. And,
Thank you very much.
We're glad that you're here with us also, and you may proceed with your comments.
Thank you. Chairman Kosser, Chairman Paszynski, members of the committee, appreciate the opportunity to come and testify before you. I had the pleasure of getting up at 3 a.m. this morning from Indiana and traveling through Philadelphia to get here, and here I am. Before I begin, let me take a moment to greet you as a colleague. I've served for 25 years in the Indiana General Assembly, and 6 of those years I was a Speaker Pro Tem, and I always enjoy coming to another state house, interacting with legislators from around the country. So I appreciate this opportunity to interact with you. I'm here today representing American Promotional Events, doing business as TNT Fireworks, based in Florence, Alabama. TNT Fireworks services over 45,000 retailers and 5,600 temporary tents and stands throughout the U.S. 2020 will be the 100th anniversary of TNT Fireworks in the fireworks business. Pennsylvania is one of the top 7 markets for our company, and we're very proud of that, and Pennsylvania is very important to us. You may not be aware that, but we chose to locate a regional distribution center in Mechanicsburg, and that facility services not only Pennsylvania, but West Virginia and all of the Northeast. We employ 50 in that location and have another 250 staff in related businesses throughout the state. Now, I have to say, before we go any further, Americans and Pennsylvanians enjoy celebrating the 4th of July. And the vast majority enjoy celebrating with fireworks. And that's the reason why you have a fireworks law, to permit that. Back in 2004, I was here with Mark Singal and others working on legislation that allowed that to be sold, the sparklers and fountains and novelties to be sold not only in retailers but in tents throughout the Commonwealth. So we know Pennsylvanians are going to have fireworks, whether it's legal or not. They're going to have them in their backyards, and we know that, and I know that from going to states where it hadn't been sold legally for 50 years. And you ask a legislator, and they will say, if I say, do you celebrate with fireworks? They say, of course. But they don't know where they get them. Somebody knows where to get them, right? And that's the way Pennsylvanians were prior to 2004. But as you know, you all passed an overhaul of the state's fireworks laws, allowing consumer-grade fireworks to be sold and used by Pennsylvanians. And with that change in the law, it allowed tents to be able to sell a limited amount of consumer-grade, and not the full boat, but something that would allow tents to compete, because tents with Keystone and TNT and others have been competing in the marketplace for a number of years. Retailers continue to sell sparklers, fountains, and novelties. And in the packet I sent to the committee, there's a sheet that looks just like this. And it sort of breaks down what's at the top is what can be sold by retailers. In the middle is what can be sold by tents. And then at the bottom is what can be sold by a bricks and mortar or a fireworks only store. And that's the compromise that was made when the bill was passed. And then also in that same packet, I have a U.S. map, so you can kind of see where Pennsylvania stacks up among other states. But unfortunately, there was a court case, as you all know, and it referenced a portion of the law that required retail sales to be to follow NFPA, or National Fire Protection Association 2006 edition, and then there was inserted in there, or any subsequent edition, and that became the problem. And that's where the court said it was unlawful to delegate legislative authority to a private agency like NFPA. And that caused the problem, as Jack said, for tents to be able to compete in the marketplace. We believe that the court decision ignored the intent of the Pennsylvania General Assembly, which was to strike a balance between what types of products can be sold in which venues. The unintended consequence is it put the tent portion of the industry at a very competitive disadvantage, which will likely put tent sales out of business, potentially as early as next year. And this has consequences for the state, too, because if we're not selling in tents, you're not getting sales tax revenue and tax revenue. But it also puts the court in an unusual position of picking winners and losers in the marketplace. We believe that the market works, and some consumers will choose to go to a retail store, as a Walmart or a Target or Giant Eagle or any of those kind of stores. Some will go to a tent because they like doing that on a parking lot, and some will go to a fireworks store, and that's the marketplace, and the consumers will decide. At its height, Pennsylvania had 350, 400 tent locations, and you would see those red and white striped tents every year around the 4th of July, most often in parking lots of retailers. And until the change, all those tents sold sparklers, fountains, and novelties. Now, our business plan, TNT, is we partner with not-for-profit organizations. These are church groups, civic organizations like Kiwanis, Lions Clubs, band boosters, soccer clubs, Boy Scouts, and yes, even some volunteer fire companies who sell fireworks as their major fundraiser of the year. And they generate money for their cause, putting millions of dollars back into communities where they're located. And without that ability to sell the limited range of consumer-grade fireworks, tents simply cannot compete in the marketplace. These organizations are now without their most successful fundraiser of the year. We think it's important to correct the situation and to restore the law to the legislature's original intent. And as was mentioned, there's a Senate bill, Senator Yaw has this bill, 696, to do just that, and we strongly support it. Now, we do support measures in Representative Ferry's bill, House Bill 1687, that address safety and use. However, we cannot support complete elimination of tent sales. Tent sales have been around for a long time in Pennsylvania. And in our case, these charitable organizations have gotten used to that being their major fundraiser. Well, tent sales, Jack mentioned, also generate revenue for the local economy through short-term lease agreements on those parking lots. They're not free. We don't just set up overnight. We have to go through a lease process, and that would be lost as well. So we believe if you want to control fireworks, and I know we've seen the articles and we've seen people complain about people shooting fireworks off at 1 o'clock in the morning and at odd times of the year. We believe it can be done in a measured and responsible way by limiting use. And frankly, we believe that should be done at the state level so that maybe you can use it 3 days before, including the 4th of July or whatever, and limit the time. We don't think it should be done by limiting sales. Our company, TNT, could not have stayed in business for 100 years if we did not insist on and encourage the safe use of our products. We do support, and we've done this in many states, public service announcements on the proper use of the product, safety pamphlets, safety and education coloring books in schools, and so on. I have to say that tent sales in Pennsylvania have operated for many years without incident, or very few incidents, and it's been a tradition for Pennsylvanians to give an option to how they're going to purchase fireworks for the 4th of July. And as I said, we do support municipalities trying to control the use. But we would caution giving further authority to municipalities on further regulation or further ability to impose restrictions on tents or retail stores. So we just think the legislature needs to move in the direction of going back to its original intent and let the marketplace work. I appreciate your time, and I thank you for giving me the time to share with you, and I'd be open to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both you gentlemen, and I didn't realize you were a legislator for 25 years, so
Well,
thank you.
I can tell you there's life after the legislature.
That's good to hear. It's great to have you with us, and thank you for traveling all that distance. I do have one question, and maybe this is for Jack. I'm interested in your sales comparison between in 2017-18, you were able to sell consumer fireworks from your facilities, but then after the court case, you were not able to and had to sell novelties. What can you tell us how your sales went from that switch from the court case? How did that affect you?
Yeah, I want to be cautious sharing proprietary information with a room full of competitors, but it went down significantly. Essentially, I mentioned during my testimony that the sales increase when we were permitted to sell consumer fireworks was at a certain level, and 80% of that increase was funds that I just took and gave to the state in license fees. So the actual financial impact of our ability to sell was almost neutral relative to prior to the legislation as a result of the significant license fees that were imposed on us. However, it's important that we be able to compete. As I also mentioned in my testimony, when you're in a market, for instance, West Virginia, where tents can sell both novelty items and consumer fireworks, the novelty items represent 40 to 45% of overall sales. The majority of sales is consumer fireworks. So it's an important product element that we be able to sell in order to compete.
I was trying to figure out the comparison because, you know, you're at one level selling novelty fireworks, then all of a sudden the next year you're able to sell both, and then you're back to novelty fireworks. So I was trying to figure out, you know.
Yeah. There are so many factors that go into it. And again, I'm sensitive to sharing proprietary information, but when the legislation allowed us to sell, it was a Wednesday, July 4th, which is of the daily cycles of July 4th, it's the lowest sales opportunity. So, and then last year, 2019, it was a Thursday, so that was a better sales opportunity. Our sales in Pennsylvania went down dramatically when we were not able to sell consumer fireworks. Perhaps after the meeting, be glad to share specific information on sales volume for each of our locations. Be glad to do that.
And I might add, sales did go down, but what we anticipate that they'll go down even further because people who came into the tent this year expected to see what they purchased last year. And while they were there, they went ahead and bought some product, but it wasn't what they were looking for because they'd gotten used to it. So we
you think they're not
anticipate-
coming back?
Yeah, that's what we think, and they'll continue to. It'll go down, and then, in our case, the not-for-profits say, it's not worth it anymore. The cost of the license, and I will say, Pennsylvania, for a license for a tent is maybe the highest in the country, at least among the highest in the country. So it's problematic.
Okay. Thank you. Chairman Paszynski?
Yeah, thank you very much for your testimony today. And again, congratulations on your years of service. So you know exactly what we're going to have to go through now.
Yes,
we have to figure all this stuff out. And 100 years is terrific. So I'm trying to calculate in my mind, how did you last 100 years without all of this consumer fireworks?
Well, the company started in Alabama, and it was actually started the company, and he was in the news business and started selling sparklers as a beginning. And of course, in the very beginning, he sold only in Alabama, and they've expanded into other states. And interestingly enough, TNT Fireworks acquired my company 21 years ago. And we were in the business of selling to retailers, chain retailers. And we sold companies like Walmart and Target, and they acquired our company. And that's how I'm involved with them.
And you're still selling to the large corporations?
Correct.
But
Yeah.
just the fantasy stuff?
Pardon me?
Just the fantasy? What is it, the novelties?
Yeah, it depends on what state. In some states, they can sell consumer-grade fireworks and retailers. They don't all do, but typically those would be sold in a Sam's Club or a Costco. But it's every state's different. I will say that you can buy some type of fireworks in 49 of the 50 states. There's only one left.
Which one's that?
Massachusetts. They're next. In
Well,
fact, ironically, there's a hearing today.
Oh, how about that? All right, I see the map. All right, well, once again, we're going to try to work together to make sure that you all can stay in the business, but also to help our police and fire protect the community and try to make it a safe process. I can also, relate back to when I was a kid. The sparklers were neat, and then you had a few fountains, and then you had the little fingers, what do you call them? The little 1-inch firecrackers. But boy, if you could get a cherry bomb, that was really neat, So if the neighborhood knew you had a cherry bomb, that meant that everybody was coming over. The only thing is, when I find out that the heat involved in some of these new fireworks, can melt glass, you pretty much can burn anything then. So we'll find some kind of reasonable solution here. We'll all work together on it. But thank you very much for your testimony.
We appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our final panel is a Pennsylvania licensed consumer fireworks sales facilities. Mr. Daniel Pert, Director of Government Affairs at Phantom Fireworks, and also Bob Kellner, President of Kellner's Fireworks. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Look forward to your testimony. You may proceed.
Well, good morning. My name is Bob Kellner, and I'm president of Kellner's Fireworks Incorporated of Irwin Township, Venango County, PA. And I'm on the board of directors of the National Fireworks Association and the Pennsylvania Pyrotechnics Association. And I'm a past director of the American Pyrotechnics Association. And first, I'd like to thank the House Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee for this opportunity to speak to you. Now, my company was founded by my parents over 70 years ago in Oil City. And today, we're Pennsylvania's largest distributor of consumer fireworks, professional display fireworks, and proximate pyrotechnics. But even so, we are still a small family-run company that my wife, my daughters, and even my 97-year-old mother are still involved with. Now, my family came here to Pennsylvania a long time ago. In fact, 2 of my 10th great-grandfathers came from Sweden to what would become Pennsylvania in 1640, and both were used as interpreters for negotiations between William Penn and the natives, the Indians. Now, Pennsylvania, fireworks have been part of Pennsylvania for almost as long as my family has. In fact, it was from Philadelphia that John Adams wrote to his wife Abigail, stating that our Independence Day ought to be celebrated with pomp and parade, bonfires and illuminations from one end of the continent to the other, from this time forward forevermore. Now, when my father got into the fireworks business in 1947, Pennsylvania was the largest producer of fireworks in the world. Keystone Fireworks of Dunbar, Fayette County, Pennsylvania, had 250 full-time employees making professional, class, and backyard fireworks. Pennsylvania was full of family-run fireworks factories. Now, today, these factories are virtually all gone, but the love of fireworks, both watching them and using them, still is strong within the citizens of the Commonwealth. When the fireworks law changed in 2017, I gave dozens of seminars on the changes throughout Western Pennsylvania to government officials, fire departments, police departments, bomb squads, arson investigators, and practically anyone else that was interested. And the surprising feedback that I got was, it's about time that we can legally celebrate the 4th of July with fireworks in Pennsylvania. Now, there were some concerns expressed about when and what time of day these celebrations could occur, and in fact, I had the same concerns. But I believe that House Bill 1687 goes a long ways towards alleviating these concerns, and hopefully Pennsylvania residents can use the fireworks that they love safely forevermore. Thank you.
You can proceed, sir.
Thank you. Chairman Causer and Pazinski, members of the committee, remaining members. My name is Daniel Peart, Director of Government Affairs for Phantom Fireworks, the country's leading retailer of consumer fireworks. Phantom has operated in the Commonwealth for nearly 30 years and has 11 permanent retail locations with more than 400 full and part-time employees. Phantom Fireworks is a member in good standing of the Pennsylvania Pyrotechnics Association, along with dozens of other state and national fireworks trade and related member associations. Thank you for the opportunity today to speak in support of House Bill 1687. Since the use of consumer fireworks was legalized in 2017, Pennsylvanians have done just that. They've celebrated our great nation's independence en masse and at times at the unfortunate expense of those surrounding them. This is not uncommon to the experiences of other states after fireworks legalization occurs. There's a honeymoon period, if you will, where people are eager to exercise their newfound freedom during the greatest holiday of the year. Unfortunately, this honeymoon period can also give way to a more frequent or excessive use of fireworks not in line with the original intent. History tells us that the novelty of legal use will dissipate after a few years and a more orderly, respectful reality of consumer fireworks use will settle in. That being said, we understand the reasoning behind creating a statutory framework to encourage citizens to use fireworks in a responsible, legal manner, as well as giving the municipal and enforcement communities something they can point to compel such behavior. Phantom believes that House Bill 1687 achieves this in creating a reasonable set of parameters around the use of consumer fireworks and affirming local control that is consistent with what other states have successfully done with their consumer fireworks laws. In closing, Phantom would like to thank Representative Ferry and the sponsors for their hard work in drafting a comprehensive bill that addresses the issues requiring attention, and the House Ag Committee for their efforts and willingness to provide this venue to discuss the bill. I urge you to vote yes for House Bill 1687, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. And obviously, you both have indicated support for the legislation. But in hearing the other testimony that we've had here today, talking about more local control by local governments, can you tell me what your thoughts are on that particular topic? Because that seems to be a theme that we're hearing from different groups.
I'd be happy to. Thank you. I think that the element of local control already provided for in House Bill 1687 achieves what some of the other folks have mentioned. It gives some of the municipal communities the ability to enact regulations or restrictions around the sale and use of consumer fireworks. Asking for more teeth to be put in it, to me, is a bit confounding, because I would, in turn, then ask for how the regulation of consumer fireworks outside of the Act has gone in these municipalities for the last 2 years as it's been legal. How many citations are being issued, and what element of local control that already exists in terms of enforcement has been exercised up to that point before asking the state to do more? You know, I think 1687 is already doing more on behalf of the state, and at times some of this falls on the shoulders of the locals, and it's an enforcement issue.
Did you have any comments, sir?
Yes, I'd just like to add that local control, or maybe lack of local regulation, kind of led to the changes in the law both in 2004 and in 2017, that people that wanted to have a family reunion, a birthday party, they were just not allowed, period, to be able to use the fireworks, the consumer-grade fireworks, for their event, which led to frustration, led to people breaking the law. And we would rather have a reasonable law that people can enjoy their event with. And
thank you. Yeah, I think that in the past it wasn't totally workable. You know, years ago I was a rural township supervisor, and you know, for people to be able to come and buy items, they had to go to a municipal official and get that permit signed. Well, I was a township supervisor in a township with 800 people, and people would show up at my house saying, "Hey, will you sign this permit?" I didn't know if they were able to really shoot off fireworks safely or not. And of course, if I wouldn't sign their permit, but I know that a lot of times those permits did get signed, and then they were able to purchase them. But were they really able to shoot them off safely was a huge question at that time. So that particular provision wasn't workable back then, and it's you know, something that I think we need to consider going forward. So, Chairman Paszynski.
And thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you, Chairman. And how about it, 97-year-old mom? That's incredible. That's really terrific.
actually, she's watching on the internet right now.
Well, let's everybody say hello to her. What's her name?
Wilma.
Hi, Wilma. Your son did a good job. I was wondering, could you tell me what percentages of your profit, or what percentages of your profit go to just professional sales? So in other words, if we break it down, some of you sell to retailers, Walmart, Sam's, or whatever, and then you also have your professional companies that put on the large displays for major events, fairs, and 4th of July, et cetera. And then you have the tents. Is it broken down in a way that we might be able to understand where the dollars are? What's your base? How much do the tents contribute to your sales?
As far as the professional municipal displays that you alluded to, Phantom is a consumer-driven business, so I suppose that part just isn't applicable to us. But as has existed in Pennsylvania, as I mentioned, Phantom has operated in Pennsylvania for nearly 30 years. And in that time, the sale of the full scope of consumer fireworks has existed in the permanent brick and mortar facilities. So in terms of consumer fireworks sales, for all but one of those 30 years, it was 100%. Because that's how the landscape has existed since its birth. So hopefully that answers your question.
It does. It does.
For our company, we're a importer and wholesale distributor, so we sell to different states for different kinds of places that they can sell from. And on the display fireworks, they're all federally regulated, and probably half of our business is to sell to groups and licensed organizations that shoot the display fireworks. But we do both the display and the consumer from our business.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I was interested in your testimony talking about how, back in you've been in business since 1947,
Correct.
And Pennsylvania was the largest producer of fireworks in the world, and then now those factories are basically gone. You testified. What precipitated that? What was it? The enactment of the fireworks laws that we had in the past that restricted it so far that put a crimp on the production in Pennsylvania, or interested in the history of that?
Well, we probably don't have enough time here today to go into all the factors, but some of the factors are trade with China. Definitely, that is a big factor because all the display and consumer fireworks today in the marketplace virtually all come from China. But there were so many different factors that in environmental regulations, a lot of these were small family-run companies. They weren't big corporations, and and a lot of times they were manufacturing under recipes that had been passed down, for lack of a better word, passed down for generations, and a lot of they didn't have the knowledge of the pollution controls, the manufacturing considerations that go into big companies today, and they just folded with more regulation.
So a myriad of factors.
Many.
Are there any questions from any of the members? Thank you very much for being here with us today. Thank you for your testimony, and that'll be very helpful for the committee as we further consider this legislation. So thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
And I do want to note that we've received testimony, written testimony from some other organizations, from the Fraternal Order of Police, from the Pennsylvania State Police, from the Pennsylvania chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and from a number of individuals. So all of that testimony will be submitted for the record and kept with the transcript of this hearing, and will be provided to the members for their information as we consider this issue. So I do want to thank everyone for their participation. Thank you for the information that we've received today. As I said, it's very helpful for us. Thank Representative Ferry, and look forward to working with everyone on this issue. So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.